Hi and welcome to the Warhammies. Today we're going to be running my Ogryn updated builds. The new talent tree has made some of these builds drastically different and all for the better. If you enjoy the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be starting with a Prospector build. Now this one I appreciate wasn't as popular as some of my others, however I just want to show you how ridiculously powerful Ogryn is now. So we're going to be using the Delver's Pickaxe. This is the Mark III. Really, it's not the perfect roll. I'd rather it had a little bit more first target, less defenses and more penetration, but this is the one I've got. In terms of the perks, we're running Unyielding just to help deal with the larger enemies like Ogryns and Monstrosities, and some extra damage to Maniacs just so we can clear rages. The blessings we've got Slow and Steady because I like running this with a bit of toughness regen, and Slaughterer, so we get some extra strength on kill. You can, if you want to get this over certain one-shot thresholds, run it with Thrust, but again, Slow and Steady is really handy. Then we've got the Rumbler. Now, I know some people hate the Rumbler compared to the shotgun version, but I like running it with Adhesive Charge and Shattering Impact. It's really handy if you're wanting to, A, just do some damage to a monstrosity that's a little bit further away from you, but also if you get a group of Reapers, one shot from this thing can kill a Reaper. More importantly, if you've got a horde of Crushers, it just knocks them about a bit, gives you a bit more breathing room. In terms of running some extra range damage on Specialists, just to help us try and kill actual ranged Gunners, and then some extra damage to unyielding enemies. For our Curios, I've actually switched these up, so we're going to be running some additional toughness. I would say ignore the sprint efficiencies on the bottom of all of these, because unfortunately, I've run out of auto dockets to really start editing things over and over again. So in terms of this one, we've got the additional toughness, 5% toughness, 5% max health. In terms of the sprint efficiency, chain of combat ability regen, whatever you like. Again, I've probably got a little bit too much stamina on this build. Then it's pretty much carbon copy, and then I've got this one, which at the very end is just some additional stamina. Now this again was just so when you're running with a pickaxe, it has such a big sprint cost, so I do normally run this one with sprint efficiency, but for the other two, feel free to switch out that sprint efficiency for whatever you want. Combat ability regen is always useful, or potentially if you're struggling with an enemy, run something specific, such as you don't like gunners, run a gunner damage reduction. Don't like dogs, run dog damage, you know. Let's hop into some talents. In terms of talents, we're going to be going straight down the middle of the tree and picking up Heavyweight. This means we do extra damage to Bulwarks, Crushers, Plague Ogryns, and Reapers. We also receive a 30% damage reduction from them. Smash 'em and the Best Defense have both received changes. They only used to work on heavy attack, when you'd heavy attack against a single target or multiple targets. Now it works at light attacks as well, which means if we pick them both up, we just regen toughness no matter what we're hitting. Get the toughness boost. Now we're going to pick up Big Friendly Rock. We know what this is. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be picking up that one didn't count. I know it's a node. If you miss, it's great. But unfortunately, the reason I don't want this is because I needed the extra talent point, and this was an easy one to drop, as normally I don't really find myself running out of rocks. Get toughness damage reduction, and then pick up Soften 'em Up. This means enemies damaged by our melee attacks take 15% more damage for 5 seconds. Then Focus Fighter, we get a 4% damage resistance from melee attacks on successful melee attack. This is a new ability, and it stacks 5 times. These stacks are removed when we take melee damage. So essentially when we're wading in to fight, we're going to be doing constant melee damage. We're going to be getting a constant damage resistance. Now this covers toughness and health. Then get a toughness damage reduction. Then get Indomitable. Indomitable, we move forward and gain 25% attack speed, 25% movement speed. We also knock everything down. We get Stomping Boots, replenish 10% toughness per enemy hit with Indomitable. Now I'm pretty sure that's a nice change, that's new, which is really handy if we're kind of caught in a bit of a strag in the corner with no toughness. And then Trample. Enemy hits by Bull Rush, we gain a stack of Trample. Trample increases our base damage by 2% for 8 seconds, and it can stack 25 times. So essentially we can be doing 50% extra damage if we hit a horde of enemies. Then get extra Rending. Now you'll notice that we picked up every node here, so get Beat Them Back. So if we just hit a melee attack, we're doing 15% extra melee damage. Crunch, they finally changed it. Now, Crunch used to be terrible. It used to be a 40% impact and 40% damage bonus. They've changed it so it's only 15% now. However, it pretty much is an innate thrust on all your weapons. So you can stack it with thrust and get further damage, but I like it because it now just means most weapons are just better innately if you use a heavy melee attack. Then gets Strike True. I like this on the pickaxe because it does have some strike down attacks and does silly damage. And Batter. Batter has also been changed, so it inflicts 2 stacks of bleed on melee hits, whether it's a light attack, and then on heavies it does 4. Get Bonebreaker's Aura, extra melee attack damage and coherency. Pick up the melee damage. Branch right quickly to get the extra toughness, and then Bruiser. We just want this because it's one of Ogryn's recharge abilities, really handy when replenishing trample. Pick up 2 Stubborn to Die, and again we've picked up a lot of these ones here. Delight and Destruction, extra damage resistance per bleeding enemy in melee range. So while they've lowered the total amount of enemies this can be affected from, we're still potentially looking at 32% damage reduction just for hitting 4 enemies with our heavy attack. Then Frenzied Blows. If we do melee attacks, we increase our attack speed. This can be up to 10%. Then get Implacable, which is 15% damage reduction while charging heavy melee attacks, so more damage reduction. So it means if we hit an enemy, we get 32%, and while charging it, essentially we're almost going to be at nearly 50% damage reduction. No Stopping Me, become interruptible while charging heavy melee attacks. Now the change they've made to this is it removes the heavy melee attack movement speed penalty. It is really good. I can't wait to show you in testing. This Ogryn now moves around really quickly. Some of the Ogryn melee weapons had this like innate slowdown on use, and now that's changed, and now it is really strong because you like zip around. So quickly branching off, we're going to get Unstoppable, which is going to give us some additional toughness regen. We could pick up the toughness damage reduction, but I am just going fully into maximizing toughness regen with our abilities, weapon talents, and everything. Then pick up just getting started. While heavy hits at 8 stacks, it gains 10% attack speed. Again, really useful and now really easy to get because it's just 8 light attacks or 4 heavy attacks. And then we're going to pick up Great Cleaver. This just means our pickaxe can cleave through more targets. Impactful is useful, but in terms of the pickaxe, I want the extra cleave behind it rather than anything else. So for the pickaxe testing, light attacks, side to side, and then up and down. The heavy are one sideways and one down strike. Block attack is a shunt, and the alternate attack is a pull. The Rumbler, really handy at killing Reapers. You just have to hit your target. Not as good against Crushers, but against Reapers this thing is silly. We know what Rock does. We're not really running it with any extra build bits, but it's always fun. Now the main thing I want to show you about this build is suddenly you'll notice we have a silly amount. And I've just nearly killed a gunner in 1 melee hit. Knocking him about. And you'll start to notice when we stack up our abilities, such as Slaughterer, we're starting to do a silly amount of damage. Note as well, as a melee attacking, we are moving very quickly, which allows us to keep Slaughterer up. But you can also see the innate thrust coming into effect. Stacks up there at the bottom to 4. Just don't miss your hit. But the important point is, what I want to show you is when we get to 5 stacks of Slaughterer. Just one more. Keep it running. And then we come over to one of our big boys. 5 stacks of Slaughterer, come over to the big guy and hit him. He's pretty much a 2-hit kill. That's massive. And that's not even running with the trample bonus. So this build has suddenly become a lot more mobile. This weapon is just, quite frankly, disgusting. And, you can run whatever range weapon you want, but it also knocks things around. You could choose to run this with extra impact if you wanted, but I've chosen the extra cleave just to make sure that damage can hit enemies. If you wanted this thing to do more damage, I'd recommend running it with thrust, so you can potentially get the 1-hit kills on Crushers, but it's up to you. I like it with the toughness regen, just because it's a silly amount of toughness regen per hit. Alright, moving on to the Bullgryn build. So my Bullgryn build, I actually haven't touched since I moved from the Microsoft Store to Steam. So unfortunately, the weapons are randomly purchased from Milk's store every time I can get a high roll one, and they don't have very good blessings on, so I will talk through them, but just bear with me. So for the Battle Maul and Slap Shield, really the dump stat you want to going to be looking at the moment really is defenses, because our crowd control, we want additional impact, we want additional attack speed, and I like having defenses. If you want to do max damage, drop defenses. The decision is yours. In terms of the perks, I like running it with block efficiency, just because if you do need to use it as a shield, you can do, and there's just additional damage to maniacs. For the blessings, we're going to be running Thunderstrike and Scroll Crusher. Now, I like these combinations. The shield does have unique skills, but I don't really like them that much. So run Thunderstrike and Skull Crusher. Essentially, we're going to be doing more damage to things we stagger, and things we have staggered, we're going to be not staggering them even more. So when we tie into some of our talents, we're going to just hopefully be keeping bigger enemies knocked down most of the time, while our team can then clear up. the Grenadier Gauntlet. Again, I haven't got a good role for this. Really, your dump stat, you can build it for melee if you like. However, in this build, that's not the focus of it. We are just using it as an explosive range weapon, which I enjoy. As you can see, my blessings are only rank 1, so do not look at those. We want to be running the rank 4 versions of this, which is, I believe, 8% strength every 0.4 seconds. And then Shattering Impact is 4 stacks of 2.5% brittleness. In terms of the perks, look at Flak Armor just because you want this to one-shot ranged enemies. And again, I like running it with a bit of sprint efficiency, just for my Ogryn to move. So let's have a look. We're going to be running this guy with a max health curio, max health toughness, and in terms of the toughness regen speed, you can get rid of that for whatever you want, whether it want to be combat ability regen, damage resistance, sprint efficiency, who knows, or block efficiency maybe. Then we've got toughness curio. Again, it's going to be the same ones that I'm using in my other build. Unfortunately, I haven't touched Ogryn that much, so just to replace that sprint efficiency with something. Just combat ability regen, whatever you want. Because the issue is this guy can't regen his shouts as quickly as some of my other builds can now. And then we've got a stamina curio. Now, the only reason I like to bring a stamina curio on this guy is firstly for the running with the Grenadier Gauntlet. Again, we do not need this much sprint efficiency. I just want to point that out to everyone. It's just because I haven't edited my curios between classes because I haven't played Ogryn that much. I don't have some high-level curios. In reality, play around with the sprint efficiency. I only really like to have it on the Grenadier Gauntlet. I probably would have switched the one out on the stamina curio here for block reduction, or block efficiency, sorry, of 20%, just because it will be slightly better. I just don't want to edit these curios because they build into some of my other builds, and I just need to get some more. Let's hop into the talents. So similar to the last build, we're going to be picking up Heavyweight, Smash 'em, and the Best Defense. If you skip straight to this one, Smash 'em and the Best Defense now work on light attacks. They each represent 5% toughness on a light attack and 15% on a heavy attack. Really handy. Toughness damage boost, and then get the Frag Bomb. Frag Bombs are amazing. They're a great way if you do get backed into a corner with this build and you need to clear some space for your team. Use a Frag Bomb. It's a 16-meter blast radius. It's huge. Then get Toughness damage reduction. Now again, we're going to be running down to soften them up. We haven't really covered the right side of this tree. We will be doing it on one of the range classes, but for now, we're not going to be touching this. It could get Strongman over Focus Fighter. I just like the idea of Focus Fighter because we're going to be doing a bunch of melee attacks. We're not really going to be killing with the shield, so this is better. I mean, with the amount of stamina efficiency we've got, we could probably be running Pumped Up, but Pumped Up's great if you're not then doing some push attacks, and there are some times in the Ogre where you might need to use that shield to block, so I'd rather just get Focus Fighter. Get Toughness damage reduction. Then get Loyal Protector. As we all know, Loyal Protector has changed. It now taunts enemies within 12 meters, making them attack me, or you, for only 15 seconds. The effect repeats after 3 seconds and then after 6. It means essentially there's like multiple waves of that taunt. So if you kill all the initial taunted enemies, and then more are running towards you, they also get taunted. A nice perk change is No Pain, Loyal Protector, and it repeats. Replenish 10% toughness and additional 0.5 each per one enemy affected. So up to 10%. So it means essentially each blast can regenerate your maximum 20% toughness. It's almost like a mini veteran shout, so it's really handy. And then we're going to be picking up Valuable Distraction. Now this just means that our allies and us can do more damage to the enemies affected by Loyal Protector. Moving down, we're going to be picking up Slam. Slam is great when starting to sling up with Thunderstruck. We're going to be knocking enemies onto their asses, and we're going to knock them down some more. We're going to need to branch left quickly to get Strike True. Not really vital for the shield, but it's more batter that we're going to need to pick up. Because the shield doesn't do that much damage on its own, the bleed that we're going to be stacking onto things that we're heavy attacking, because I'll be honest, the kind of attack speed and movement is very similar to how it used to work, so we need this bleed to be able to kill things. Now we've got some new abilities here, which I'm going to pick up for the fun of it. If you wanted to run it very similarly, I'd probably get rid of these ones and then branch it down to Delight and Destruction. But for now, Breach of Strength, I picked this up because we're going to be running it with one of the later talents, No Pushover, that essentially just means enemies we push just gain a brittleness, which is really handy. Now, it sounds really silly, but I like the concept of simple-minded, just an Ogryn who is too stupid to understand they are being corrupted. Pick it up, yeah, it's fun. And then for the little ones, this is a new ability, so on ally getting Toughness Broken, gain 10% strength and 25% damage reduction for 10 seconds on a 30-second cooldown. On ally getting knocked down, gain stun immunity and a 25% revive speed for 10 seconds. This is very much a support Ogryn perk. I would get it, it's really handy, especially because people's toughness gets broken all the time on higher difficulties. So Essentially, 25% damage toughness reduction constantly every 30 seconds. Not bad. You can get Unbreakable if you want, but we're not really looking to do perfect blocks with the shield. I would have kind of liked to have seen Unbreakable be an actual, I guess, perk on the shield or a blessing rather than a passive perk within the tree. I think there's some of them are required to block a certain amount of damage before doing extra melee, and it would have been nice to see potentially this being woven into that. But we're not picking it up for this tree. Get Stay Close, which gives us 50% toughness replenishment for allies in coherency. Then Branch Down, get 25% toughness. Branch Right to get Bruiser. We don't have any way to regen combat ability other than this perk, so pick it up. Get Stuck In, so when we do activate Taunt, we move faster, and we're also immune to stuns and suppression. Attention Seeker, again a must with the Slab Shield. It works on ranged enemies, so when they shoot you, they'll run out with their melee weapons. Now, No Pushover. When No Pushover was added to the tree, I really liked it. Especially when you, on higher difficulties, when you get like a horde of Crushers or Ogryns coming towards you, it knocks them over. And then when we tie it in with the extra impact we're doing on the shield, it's a fantastic way to deal with enemies. Get Hard Knocks, so enemies staggered by our melee attacks get 50% more melee damage. Again, we're going to be staggering everything. No Hurting Friends. This is another new ability, which we gain 2.5% strength on damage taken by you or your allies in coherency. 5% max stacks, last 10 seconds. 15% toughness damage reduction on max stacks. Again, people are taking toughness damage constantly in this game, so hopefully you should be sitting at a lovely 5 stacks most of the time, so you're getting a 50% toughness damage reduction, and you do 10% extra damage. Then we're going to pick up Feel No Pain. Feel No Pain doesn't change too much. You know, you get 10 total stacks. Each stack grants some extra toughness replenishment and a toughness damage reduction. Taking damage removes 1 stack, and stacks are restored every 3 seconds. Pained Outburst. When it reaches 5 stacks or below, you push back enemies and replenish 50% toughness. This is better because it now works when it's halfway down its stacks and not when you're completely out. So if you're kind of toitering between 7 and 4 as you regen it, that's a nice way because now suddenly you're just regenerating toughness just by taking damage. Strongest, pushing enemies restores back 1 Feel No Pain. I like this if potentially Pained Outburst is resetting soon. You can just push some enemies with the shield. Again, we've got a silly amount of stamina on this build currently. Really handy. And then Toughest, Feel No Pain grants an additional toughness replenishment per stack. So in total, when it's at max stacks, you could hopefully be getting a 50% toughness regen. So for the Slab Shield, light attacks are side by side. The heavy attacks, sweep with the shield and stab with the shield. They do a lot of impact damage. The push attack pushes the shield and swipes down. You can slam the shield down, and you can have a look around while you're doing this, but just be really careful using this, because if you get backed into a corner, it's great when you use Lord Protector and your allies are still up, but normally, if you're stuck in a corner, you'll probably just end up getting killed. The Grenadier Gauntlet, well, it's not perfect at the moment, but with the current damage output it's doing, it can kill enemies. It's not the best against Carapace armor. However, the Grenadier Gauntlet has received a buff. Only used to have 4 shots, and now it's got 5. One of the main perks about the Grenadier Gauntlet is, I mean, this is running it with no extra melee buffs, but this thing is actually quite an effective melee weapon now. The alternate attack punches an enemy, and then causes the explosion. Frag Bomb, we know what it does. You throw it, and it kills pretty much everything on screen. It's a really handy way of dealing with hordes. Say if you backed into a corner, your teammates are down, you need to get a revive off, drop it and use it. Loyal Protector, we know how it works. Staggers enemies, but as you can see, I've got 11 stacks there, and it's just replenished with that, and there'll be another one. So there's 3 total taunts now out of this, each of those replenishing some toughness as they go. The push attack we have as well, the additional stagger, I have found when actually playing in game, it works significantly better than it does in here. Just give it a go in game. Trust me, it is a really handy ability. In terms of this shield can push through quite an amount of pushes. Hey, we pushed him down. Yeah, if you want, you can bully the Reapers. Top tier Darktide gameplay. So we're going to be moving on to my Ogryn Gunner build. Now again, this one has had some beneficial changes, but it operates in a very similar manner. So we're going to be running the Mark 19 Latrine Shovel, which we're going to be running Blessing and Confidence Strike. Confidence Strike is just to allow us to regen some more toughness, and Thrust to allow us to do some heavy strike down damage, because one of the things this thing's going to struggle at is single target damage, especially on armored enemies. I'm running it with a bit of sprint efficiency here and some carapace armor enemies. Feel free to get rid of that sprint efficiency. I just like it on this guy because if you are gunning some enemies down and you realise you're left behind, it just lets you get back that little bit quicker because we're not running any stamina curios. Then we're going to be running the Mark V Twin Linked Heavy Stubber. Now, I know this is a really silly stubber setup, but I really enjoy it. So I'm going to be running it with some additional range critical strike chance and some range critical hit damage. The Ogryn build tree has had some additional changes done to critical hit stuff, so this thing means I think we've actually got like a 24% critical hit chance, and with the amount of bullets we're flowing down range, it's going to be getting criticals a lot of the time. Then we've got Charmed Reload, which means we reserve 5 bullets on critical hit, and Ceaseless Barrage, so we get 20% suppression and 6% damage against suppressed enemies. This thing will suppress a lot of enemies. It's a bunch of fun, and we do more damage against them. For our curios, we're going to be running a 20% max health with some max health toughness and toughness regen. You can get rid of the toughness regen, as I believe it only really works on your actual kind of ally coherency toughness regen. Feel free to switch that out for combat ability regen. In terms of this, we're looking at some toughness curios with some additional toughness, some extra toughness regen speed. Again, you can switch this out if you so choose, but I like to whack on an extra damage distance against gunners. Now, this only works on heavy gunners, but sometimes you're a big Ogryn, they will cause you a bunch of problems. So I like running pretty much 2 carbon copies here, just so we can get 40% damage distance against them, almost so I can shoot them back. But in reality, if you want to get rid of that toughness regen speed, because it only does work on coherency toughness, feel free to do so. Combat ability regen is always a beneficial one, or more health. Let's hop into the talents. So first thing you need to pick up is Steady Grip. Get Steady Grip, it means we get some additional toughness regen while bracing our ranged weapon. Heavyweight, we're going to be getting 30% extra damage against Bullgryn, Crushers, Reapers, and Ogryns. You need this one. It's, again, a really fantastic Ogryn ability. And then we're going to be getting Smash 'em. As I mentioned before, Smash 'em and the best events have had changes. Get a toughness boost. Now, we could get Towering Presence, potentially, to tie into our curios. However, Smash 'em at the moment, because it works on light attacks, it's just too good to pass up, especially when combining it with chained hits. It means essentially when we start hitting things loads of times on melee weapon, especially single target damage, which this build is going to struggle with, it allows us to stay alive in close combat. So we're going to get Bombs Away. Now, everyone who watches this channel will know I am very enthusiastic about Bombs Away. Bombs Away is a fantastic utility, not just necessarily a damage dealing weapon, but a fantastic way to get a revive off, to clear some space. It's a really handy grenade, and now you get 3 of them. In addition, bigger box of hurt, pick this one up. It gives you so much more additional time. It is amazing. Off here, we're going to be getting toughness damage reduction. Payback time, so on 15% damage or 5 seconds after a successful dodge or being hit by an attack. Can't hit me again, gives us some additional damage resistance against range damage, especially if we accidentally get caught out in those moments where a gunner is just beaming you. With our curios and this, we're looking at 60% damage resistance, and then get toughness boost. We don't really need keep shooting. Our combat ability regens our magazine, so don't worry about it. Get the toughness boost. And then we're going to be picking up Point Blank Barrage. Now, Point Blank Barrage now gives you a 25% pet fire rate, 65% reload speed, 50% reduced brace movement speed penalties, and gain 15% close range damage for the next 10 seconds. They've added that, so it now works on the Ripper gun as well. Get Bullet Bravado. We replenish toughness for every shot fired, so essentially we're going to keep that toughness up. Now, in terms of Hail of Fire and Light 'em Up, these are pretty much interchangeable. Choose whichever one you want. However, if you want to run Hail of Fire, if you do not want to deal with armored enemies, run Hail of Fire. If you want to potentially do some extra damage to bosses and just hordes, light 'em up. Get the reload speed. The Big Boom. Big Boom is, again, when combined with Box at Hurt, a really handy ability. And Fire Away. This means that our grenade box will now do burn damage. So potentially we can do 8 stacks of burn damage to an enemy, meaning that box is actually going to do more. Get Ammo Stash. Increases our ammo reserves by 25%. We're going to ignore Concentrate here. I don't want Concentrate because it's going to be shredding our stamina, which we don't really have much of, but it's not really required for this gun because this gun isn't a pinpoint shooty thing. We're going to be spraying. I don't want to be losing stamina per second. Coward Culling. So this gives us 20% damage against suppressed enemies, which ties in very nicely with our ranged weapon, which does loads of suppression. Get the opening damage boost. Branch left quickly, get the toughness boost. Then get Bruiser. Bruiser, again, we've been over it. It's the only Ogryn combat ability regen thing. It's fantastic. And then get Stuck In. I like getting Get Stuck In because when you're moving forward with your ranged weapon, with Point Blank Barrage active, it just means you're moving really, really quickly. Really handy at kind of closing down and getting around those corners. You could potentially switch this one out for reloaded and ready when we're going down the tree, because this just is a 15% damage boost on active vulnerability, but we'll get to that. Get unstoppable movement, so we get more movement speed, 3 seconds on a range kill. Mobile emplacement, so we take less damage when we're bracing a ranged weapon. Get Massacre. Yeah, Massacre ties in with our ranged weapon, so with the critical hit chance, then Massacre, if we shoot through a horde of enemies, we're actually going to be getting potentially up to a 70% extra critical hit chance. We've got about 120 bullets to shoot, so we're going to be doing a fair amount of criticals. We're tying this in, our criticals now do 50% extra damage. Burst limiter override. So we have a 15% chance of triggering lucky bullets and not consuming ammo when making ranged attacks. In addition, we get some additional ranged attack damage on range kills. It max stacks 10 times. We're going to branch off and get good shooting. So every time lucky bullet activates, it's a critical hit, which means it does more damage. Maximum firepower. 10% ability cooldown reduction for 4 seconds when lucky bullet triggers. So we regen our ability back. And heat of battle. Yeah, we're just going to shoot even faster. So you could get Bullet Storm if you wanted to. It does give you some additional range damage. The other branch off here now is Back Off, where if you kill enemies with melee attacks, it automatically means that you're going to get a lucky bullet. So just running through the shovel. The shovel's melee attacks, light attacks are side by side, and your heavies are kind of strike downs. Its push attack, again, is an overhead that comes in from the left side. And you knock it down with your alternate attack to do heavy single target damage. Really handy when you combine it with thrust. For the ranged weapon, it's got a hip fire, and it's got a brace ranged attack. The more ammo we expend, the more suppression we're going to be doing. It's not that good against carapace armor, so if you're shooting maulers, hit their chest where the flak armor is. Big box of grenades. I like to show it on a horde, but if you hit something, it's going to poop out loads of grenades. And as you can see, it gives you a significant amount of time to be able to cover yourself and get a revive off. Especially with the burn, it can now kill a lot more things. So one of the main points about this build is before you start shooting things, you want to brace. You then want to activate your ability and start spraying. This thing will shoot really fast, so make sure that when you're actually shooting things, there is a target to shoot, because you will cleave through them nice and easy. Obviously, continuous fire means we're going to be doing extra suppression, meaning enemies are going to be running everywhere. But with Lucky Bullet active, we will be shredding through. The only thing you're going to have to watch out for is this thing might expend all your ammo in one hit. But it does a lot of critical hit damage. One last little thing I just want to show you about Ogryns actually is the dodge has changed. You now knock enemies about when you dodge into them. You don't get caught on them anymore. Really handy. Just be warned, it doesn't work on the bigger guys. Moving on to the Breacher build, I know this was my most recent Ogryn build and it necessarily didn't hit the mark in kind of being good enough, shall we say, for higher end content. However, the new update has actually brought some changes, and I appreciate this changes to the talent tree. The power maul didn't receive any changes, and after testing out this build with some of the new perks, I understand why. We'll get into it in testing, but with this thing's attack speed mulched up, it's ridiculous. So we're going to be running the power maul. Stats haven't changed on this thing. Still using Power Surge and Skull Crusher when we want it. The main thing is using Power Surge is going to be absolutely fantastic at setting off attacks into carapace armor enemies, and I'll show you again in testing, but it's really, really fun. In terms of the dump stat for this, we're going to be wanting defenses. We don't really need too much stamina for this build, because we're running a few bits of sprint efficiency, but we'll talk about changing that later on. We're also going to be using the Mark V Ripper Gun with perks damage to flak armor, 25 damage to unyielding. We're going to be using Blaze Away and Fire Frenzy. Now you can change this if you're struggling with the carapace, which prior to the skill tree update we were, where you could have been using the can opener ability to be able to use the stab and the bayonet, but that's no longer a problem now that we've got a buffed up power maul. But anyways, moving on to the curios, we're going to be running a 20% max health with max health toughness, and the toughness regen speed here is probably just an overlay from one of my old builds. I would probably switch that up. You can run combat ability regen, or potentially if you're struggling against a certain type of enemy, put on a damage resist. Then we've got toughness curio and a carbon copy toughness curio. Now again, I like to run sprint efficiency on these just because the power maul doesn't have that much stamina associated with it, so if you're trying to catch up or get to things, it just helps in that sense. But in reality, you can switch these out for combat ability regen if you so choose. Now hopping into the talents. So moving into the talents, we've got a bit of an odd route down the tree, but stick with me. So we're going to be picking up heavyweight as per usual. Fantastic Ogryn skill. It's just 30% more damage and a 30% damage reduction. We're going to be getting Smash 'em and the best defense. Now the reason for this is these have both been changed. They only used to work on heavy attacks, however now they work on light attacks. The power maul to light attacks do single target hits, and the heavies do wide sweeps. So this allows us to link in terms of almost like having an innate chained hit, where constant hits would regen your toughness. They're really, really useful, especially because the power maul can sometimes hit more than one enemy. It sometimes counts here. Get the toughness boost, and we're going to be getting bombs away. Now bombs away, as you can see, suddenly has a node on. This gives it more grenades being released, which is fantastic if you need to use it to get a revive off, because it now staggers over a massive area and for a significant amount of time. Then pick up the toughness damage reduction. Then get Soften them up, which means enemies damaged by melee attacks take 15% more melee damage. Pumped up, we're just getting some additional damage resistance while above 75% stamina. Focus Fighter, so every 4% of damage resistance from melee attacks and successful melee attack. So we just essentially, when we're doing damage, we're going to be building up damage resist for when we take it. It gets wiped when we take that damage. Then get a toughness damage reduction. Loyal Protector. And pick up No Pain here, which is really fantastic because it replenishes 10% toughness and additional 0.5 each for 1 per enemy affected, up to 10% for 3 seconds. It's almost like a mini veteran shout that has a prolonged toughness regen. Now I'm going to pick up Go Again here. This is just because we're going to be staggering loads of things with the power maul, and actually you can see it just click up ever so slowly. So if you're running this again with some combat ability regen stuff, it just helps us get there. If you want to do more damage, use Valuable Distraction. But I quite like this just because we really were using it for the stagger. Then get Slam. We want more impact bonus. Just makes it really silly, so we replenish some stamina as well. Now pick up Ammo Stash. This is just for the Ripper Mark V because it can shred through ammo when you're not paying attention. Then get Strike True. Extra weak spot damage. With the power attack, normally a light one is an overhead with it, so really easy to hit the weak spots. Batter. Batter has been changed, and it's really, really useful because of this. We inflict 2 stacks of bleed on melee hits, and that's light attacks, heavy attacks, and heavies do 4. Bowbreaker's Aura. Extra melee damage for you and your allies in coherency. It's frustrating because it would have been nice to get beaten back, just if you used charged heavy. But unfortunately, we don't have the points to get the additional rending and then down to there. Moving further down, grab the melee damage boost. Now just branch off right quickly, get toughness boost, and get Bruiser because we want to be regenerating our combat ability even more. Get Stuck In just so when we use it, we can move faster. And then lastly, No Hurting Friends. Now this is again a new ability which gives us 2.5% strength on damage taken by you or allies in coherency. People take damage a lot of the time, so essentially we're hopefully going to be running at an extra 12.5% damage just for playing with other people. And when we get to max stacks, we get a 15% toughness damage reduction. Coming back this way, get Frenzied Blows. This is a must. You need 2.5% melee attack speed on chained hit. If you hit things, you're going to attack faster. Get Too Stubborn to Die, just so our toughness replenishment is increased when we're low health. Pick up Delight in Destruction. As we're now doing bleed damage on light attacks, this also has a way to give us some additional damage reduction when building into that kind of toughness damage. So we're going to be hopefully taking a lot less toughness damage and regenerating a lot more. And Heavy Hitter, 3% melee damage at 7.5 seconds on melee attack hit, stacks 8 times and gain 2 attacks on heavy attack. Just getting started, this is what we need. While Heavy Hitter is at 8 stacks, gain 10% attack speed. And I accidentally had selected this and not what I wanted to, which is impactful. So we also gain additional impact for each stack, which means our weapon will be doing up to 80% impact, which means this power maul is going to be knocking things about. It's just really fun. If you want some extra damage reduction, pick up Don't Feel a Thing. Again, we've got Unstoppable. If you wanted to replenish more from a melee kill, you can do. But I like impactful because it means the power maul can knock things around more. So the power maul didn't receive any changes. Its light attacks are strike downs, with the occasional relentless that knock enemies about. Its push attack does a sweep to the right. And its heavy attacks are wide sweeps from side to side. Really handy when just trying to clear a horde. Power maul also has the active attack. Buffed in with our perks, this causes suppression in a range. It's about 10 to 12 meters, I think, from the last testing that I used to do. And the main thing is, if you stack it with your light attacks, it's a really handy way to keep a horde at bay because they all get staggered. The Ripper Gun, well, it's got a bayonet attack, the braced attack with shooting. And then, we mentioned in the previous video, it's almost got that sniper attack because of the pellets and the way pellets are calculated on this gun. Really effective at range for some reason. Obviously a little bit easier to aim with mouse and keyboard. But big box of boom. Throw at an enemy. And as you can see, it's going to stagger people for a really long time. That's enough time to get a nice revive off. That last little pop will save you. In terms of taunt, well, it's just a taunt. Main thing is, when we knock enemies about, which we're going to be doing with our light attacks, as you can see, the ability is slowly regenning. It only appears to proc once per attack though, so it doesn't matter if you're doing a light or heavy, but it's really fun. To show you that suppression attack, what it'll do is really hard to see in here, but those enemies get staggered, and it can knock them over. So you can use that to clear some space or some breathing room for your team when you're stuck in a horde. But the one thing I want to show you about this build is I'm just going to hit this enemy real quick. Just getting up my stacks of heavy hitter. And remember, on repeated attacks, we've also now got 20% attack speed. You come in and you just start hitting the crusher. We are attacking ridiculously fast for an Ogryn. These are just light attacks. These are basic light attacks. And this is before we even consider staggering them with the shout to do even more stagger damage. I can understand why the power ball didn't receive any changes. It's a beast of a weapon. Yeah, but that's the breach build. Not much to it. And there we have it. That's all there is for today. Just a brief look at updating some of the Ogryn builds that I've had out for a while. It's amazing how some of them have changed so drastically, especially the Prospector build that I've got. Suddenly it feels a lot more fluid and a lot funner to play. I used to have an issue with playing Ogryn builds, and I know I was going to mention it in the breach build video, that the power maul just felt, not good. Power maul gang rise up. But part of the process really behind all of this is just about making unique, fun ways to play the game that feel drastically different from one another, because it's unfortunate there are definitely ways to min-max these builds, and 100% you can make them better, and I would always recommend tailoring any build to your play style. So if there's something that you don't quite like about it, 100% make the change. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to leave a like and comment down below what you did enjoy. If you didn't enjoy it, let me know why. Anyways, I hope you all have a good day, and I'll catch you in the next one.